I'm back with another video, still with the same cup of coffee. Nothing's changed. Anyway, all right, I'm going to talk about the surveillance memoir now. This is your next paper that you're going to be working on. This is due June 17th, so today's the 4th, so you've got 13 days to kick this one out. So that's like forever in undergrad time. So you've got a while to work on this. But anyway, let's go through this and talk a little bit about what's expected of you. All right, so as I just said, it's due June 17th. It's a Sunday night on campus before 11:59 p.m. It's 1,000 words. It is 10% of your final grade, so not as much as the previous paper was, but still a decent portion. And if you're wondering why I'm looking up to the side, I'm reading off my computer screen, so if you're like, why is she not staring at the screen? That's why. Document design, same sort of thing as we've done before, 12-point font, 1-inch margins, that sort of thing. You don't need sources for this one. This one's a memoir. It's about you, so you don't need any extra sources. The corresponding chapter from our reading is Under Surveillance, Chapter 3, Growing Up Observed. So the reading that you're doing for this week is related to this assignment. That was a very dramatic coffee break. All right. A memoir. This is the assignment description, and I'm just reading this from the assignment description that can be found in the modules. It can be found in the assignments tab, and it can be found under the files tab as well. All right, so the assignment description is, a memoir is a piece of writing that allows a writer to share memories with readers. These memories should be connected through a theme of some sort, giving shape to the narrative of the essay. So as you can guess, for the theme for this essay, right, it's surveillance. You're really looking back at and kind of exploring your memories of being surveyed. So much as Randolph Lewis does in Chapter 3 in Under Surveillance, your goal in this paper is to compose a memoir detailing your observations of surveillance during your life. Beginning on page 96 of our book, and remember when I said in the weekly update, page 90, and I changed it to 96, it is page 96. You will find a sample surveillance memoir composed by Lewis that you can use as inspiration for your own. As you'll notice, Lewis does not detail every instance in his life in this short section of the chapter, but instead highlights very specific moments that are connected by a theme. Similarly, you should choose a theme that your readers can follow through your memoir that link together the examples you select. So, for instance, you might think of a theme of babysitting. You might think of a theme of playing with your friends. You might think of a more broad theme of technology. And so you're going to find 4 instances of surveillance that kind of highlight this theme. So if you choose babysitting, you might say, well, when I was a child, we had a babysitter who used a monitor, or my parents used a monitor. We also had a nanny cam, so perhaps the babysitter didn't know they were being watched. You might choose maybe yourself. Maybe you were a babysitter in the different instances of that. You might say, let's say if you talked about technology in general, you might talk about the different apps that your parents have installed on your phone. You might talk about the different technologies that were used against you. Again, you might bring the nanny cam example in for you if you'd like. So you can really be creative with this assignment, really thinking about a theme that you can kind of see highlighting this idea throughout your life. But you want to make sure that you have 4 specific examples of surveillance. So that's really what you're aiming for here. So you want to pick a theme, that's your first goal, and then you're going to try to think about how these different events really tie into this theme. And then you're going to make sure you have 4 examples that tie into that theme. So pick the theme and then try to find those 4 examples that tie into that theme. You must discuss examples about yourself, not the way surveillance affected others. The one exception to this would be, as I just mentioned, if you were the babysitter, for example, and you were the one that actually had the experience of using something to do the surveillance. I don't want you saying, oh, my cousin was surveyed in this way, or my best friend experienced this. That's not what we're talking about. It has to be specifically about you. If you don't have it about you specifically, you will receive a deduction for this paper. All right, so let's talk about the different features of memoirs. And I will pause to say I will do another annotation of the actual essay from the book to kind of walk through what Lewis has done so you get an idea of how he's used the different examples, how he how the actual surveillance memoir functions. So be on the lookout for that over the next week or so that I post um, that annotation of that example from the book. Okay, so what are the different features of a memoir? There's an engaging title. It's always a weird thing, like, how do I write a title, or do I include a title? But a memoir usually has a title that kind of hints at the theme or the meaning of the essay that follows. It has an introduction with a lead that captures the reader's interest or sets a scene. The intro could be a good place to describe an event that happened. You don't necessarily have to spend this intro talking about, here's going to be my 4 examples. You could actually dive into an example, can kind of dive into the action in the intro if you like. You can set up the intro as a classic intro, like, I'm going to be talking about surveillance. Here are the 4 examples that I'm going to be reviewing. You can do that. That's fine. But, this is a place if you want to get a little creative, you can do that too. There must be a complication that's resolved in some way, a tension or conflict between people's values and beliefs, or personal inner conflict that the author faces. What this means for this type of paper, for the surveillance memoir, this complication is really that complication about surveillance, that conflict of how you feel from being watched, the values or beliefs that you have about being watched. Do you feel like your privacy was being invaded, or did you feel comforted knowing you were being watched? That's the type of tension we're looking at here. A kind of plot that draws a reader forward as the memoir moves through a series of scenes or stages. So you might structure your paper chronologically. You might start from when you were very young and move forward, or conversely, you might start with the most recent event and move backwards. It's up to you. There's some sort of intimacy between the narrator and the reader, allowing the reader to speak with the readers in a personal one-on-one way. I don't want to say this is an informal paper by any means, but this has a much more conversational tone. So you can think of it as having a conversation with the reader. As if you were telling them a story, like, oh, when I was younger, I remember my parents installing this app. And this is how I felt when I was, when it was, being used, or when they were looking at the data from it, or something like along those lines. Really some sort of conversation that you're having. A memoir has a lot of details. It's very vivid. That gives the story greater imagery, texture, and impact. So this gives you the chance to really describe a lot of events. There's a central theme or question that's rarely announced or answered explicitly, but the narrator explores and reflects on with the reader. Here you might be a little bit more explicit in terms of talking about surveillance, but that's what we're talking about when we get to that bullet point, the central theme or question. You're not going to say, and here is surveillance. You're really, the reader's going to kind of understand what you're talking about. You can say, here's an example of me being surveyed. But this one, you're not going to be like, again, like I said, and this is surveillance. I think it'll make more sense when you read the sample in the book. And then finally, a new understanding or revelation that presents a moment of growth, transformation, or clarity in the writer. So that last bullet point really will come as your conclusion. So that concluding paragraph will really be your time to reflect on, whether the surveillance that you've experienced is good, or whether or not the surveillance you've experienced is ineffective. Those sorts of ideas. To begin your memoir, think back to the ways you were observed growing up as a child. In what ways did these moments of being watched affect you? You might want to focus on 4 specific time periods in your life, or you can focus on 4 specific events. It's up to you. Please note, surveillance isn't always a bad thing. You could easily write a surveillance memoir detailing the benefits and downfalls of surveillance, so you're not limited to one idea or the other. Grading. To have success on this paper, you should incorporate a clear theme throughout this memoir, and you must include 4 specific examples. And again, the 212 rubric is on Canvas under Files for further grading details. So that's what this assignment is all about. That's what I'm looking for this assignment. And again, I'll post kind of an annotation of this specific example from our book soon, so you get an idea. As always, if you have questions, please shoot me an email. I'm happy to help with it. All right, I'll see you soon.